What I will show you today, that is my experience after around 20 years with sled dogs. I will share some of my experience, how you should think and how you should count on it and so on. And I will give you some tips, what I have learned over 20 years with sled dogs. I will just show you how we used to feed the dogs here at Laplandhusky. And my name is Kim and I have around 30 sled dogs. And all of the dogs I have, that is Alaskan Huskies. Wintertime are they used for, so I'm doing sled dog tours with them. And summertime I'm doing more cart tours with them. And of course, during all these years, so have I self done a lot of mistake and stupid things. And hopefully will you not need to do all that kind of long way what I have walked. Dog food and so on is it's costing a lot when you're having sled dogs. It's you can roughly say the dogs are costing roughly €1.5 per day, per dog per day. But the dog food is a big part of the cost on a sled dog kennel. You can of course feed them with cheaper food and so on, but it's often not worth it. It's actually, so I recommend you to feed the best food what you afford to pay for. It's often worth it in the end. It is mainly 3 ingredients we are feeding with at Laplandhusky. That is kibble, dry food, and some frozen fresh food, and then is it water. Summertimes we feed only dry food, and I use the same dry food the year round. It's no different. It's only wintertime I adding more other stuff to it and give them snacks as well, and splitting up the food much more so it's easier for them to digest the food. Summertime when they're not needing the same amount of energy, so right now are we just feeding once per day. They have water in the balls now in the summer. Winter times are we feeding with more water in the food. So now in the summers are we not having so much water in the food. Normally with dry food it's more or less so you will get what you pay for it. It's sad to say, but it's no shortcut. And I think all the people who have little more sled dogs are trying and testing a lot of different dog food before they finding the ones what's fitting them and so on. I feeding with Royal Canin. I know it is a lot of other food out there what is great as well. This is not sponsored or anyway. It's I pay completely full price for all the food I buying. I get a little bit of discount of course on the food because I'm buying a whole pallets each time. All the food are in big blocks, original what we are buying. We buy them in 10 kilo blocks and then I slicing them down in smaller pieces. Now are the pieces a little bit bigger and sometimes I'm slicing them much smaller so it's even going much quicker to feed them. So I just can add hot water on it and then feed them directly. These pieces need little longer time to defrost. But if I'm out on tours, I'm slicing them smaller. Or so I'm having bigger pieces with me and then cut them with an axe to make them smaller. But in general, I'm feeding them on about the same way. It's the amount and the proportion between the dry food and the meat what can be a different through the season as well. And then is it fresh water on top of that. The whole time when we're feeding the dogs, so after the food, so are we always cleaning the buckets so they are rinsed and it's not a lot of old fat what's laying there and getting smelly and causing a lot of bacterial and so on. It's not so I dishwash them really. I'm doing that now and when, but it's more or less so I rinse it out with hot water, throw it away, and then when I as well defrosting the food, so I'm letting it stand so short time as possible to defrost, so it's not standing there for a long time. And I try to feed them as simple as possible. It should work the same way if I'm at home or if I'm out on a tour. One thing I can do different, that is the meat pieces can be smaller, so I can add it directly in the water in the dog bowl. But all the dry food I feed is normally dry in the bowl. It is not often I'm giving any dry food what have lay in the water any long time. It's often causing more diarrhea for the dogs. In general, a good thing, what is a good rule, can you say, that is it's often so if you feed them dry, the shit is gonna get dry as well. So that is often a good thing to, if you have problem with dogs who having a bit of diarrhea, that is an easy way to change. Try to give them the dry food dry instead. They often like it more as well, to eat it dry. The meat itself, the frozen meat from the frozen food, that is often we even slice it and give it to them frozen. And that is something they really enjoy because it's something for them to put the teeth in. But wintertime, is it not optimal to give it frozen to them the whole time, because one thing is it's going more energy for them to heat up the food and defrost the food and melt it before they're getting out, so they're getting out less energy from it. The other thing is winter time, so is it nice to feed them with something warm, at least if it are really cold outside. It's a big difference as well how you're feeding the dogs, like the dogs I have to compare with dogs what another sled dog company have. One way what's working for them, it's not sure it's working for me. It's depending on how you handle the food and can store it and can defrost it and melt it and everything, as well how the dogs are. If it are more houndier type of dogs or if it are more polar type of dogs. The dogs I have is more, I would say, medium polar kind of dogs, and they are Alaskan Huskies, all of them. Some of them have a bit taller back and longer legs and so on, and some of them is a bit more active and need a bit more food. Some of them as well was running around more in the dog yard and so on, and moving around more. Even when they are at home and not out at work, they are more active. But you need to look on the dogs to see how much food you need to give them. So you cannot only look on the bag and how many deciliter you should give them. It's a bit of feeling when you're knowing your dogs, how much they need over the season and so on. It's a big difference on how the dry food is. When you're reading on the bags, it looks like they are really good, but it's big different from what, for example, the protein is coming from. Think about carbohydrates, for example, for humans. Both sugar and rice is carbohydrate, but the rice is better for us. It's better for us to eat when the sugar is. And so is it even with the different kind of fats, for example. You have faster fats and slower fats for the dogs to digest. So it's only because it's written the amount of fat on the bags, that don't need to be a good quality of the fat for the dogs. They can put in cheap fat, what not is good for the dogs. If you're asking 10 different people who are having sled dogs how they are feeding the dogs, so is the chance big you will get 10 different kind of answer. It's very much a way, when you're feeding the dogs, it should be a way what's working for you. It should be a simple way what's working for you and work for the dogs, so the dogs are eating and liking it. Because it doesn't matter how good the dog food is if they don't eat it. Sometimes can it even be better, instead of defrost the meat, to give it in small pieces what is half frozen in the food. That is as well something what they often like to take and eat. Now at the moment, so are they not needing so much food? They are needing roughly around 2,500 kilocalories per dog per day, roughly. But winter time, if you're training a lot, so is the amount of food up to over 10,000 kilocalories. And that is a big amount of energy, what you should put in a body on roughly 20-25 kilo. So then is it very important to feed them on the right way. Often a thing what's happened when you're buying, if we say cheaper food and so on, that is you often buying a lot of extra stuff and add to the food. And then in the end, so is it not any cheaper? The only what's happened, that is, it's being more difficult, can you say, each time you're feeding because you're mixing things. So it's being more complicated to feed them. I like to keep it simple, so simple as possible. So it should be easy to feed them. Feeding is one of the daily routines. And it's not on the feeding you should spend the time with the dogs, it's on other things. I hope you have get out some information what is helpful for you to make it easier for you in your own decision when you should feed your dogs. Even if you just have 2 dogs, so is it probably helpful. My name is Kim and I have a small company what's called Laplandhusky. So I'm offering sled dog tours both wintertime and summertime actually.